Hello there everyone, this is Seed & Co. and I recently finished this piece. It is of my D&D party, 4 members. So first step is to gather all the reference, a previous sketch I made of one of the members. That one is the human fighter. And so this piece is supposed to be a time skip version of all the characters with their new equipment. So this is my character, the Elven Wizard. He's got a trench coat he found from a outer planar traveler, and the glass staff from a glass staff. So this is Muradin, the life cleric, and he managed to get plate armor, and the player wanted it to be based on the berserk armor from Berserk. So I had just a dandy time drawing this. Like, I'm sure once you've drawn it once, it sort of gets easier because it is symmetrical, it is following a pattern, but the first time definitely would throw someone for a loop like it did me. So this is Dawnbreaker. It's a mace based on the sun. And lastly, this is the halfling Rougue, and they're wearing this wyvern cloak. So I wasn't originally sure how it was going to look, so I was using a bunch of different references, just mixing and matching bits. That's their singing sword. And then eventually I actually asked the person what they thought of the design, and they're like, oh, I actually thought of something more regal, more refined, So instead of a hood, it is a high collar. And I realized, oh, I could add a crossbow because he does have a crossbow and he does switch weapons. So now we're going back to the human fighter. And for the human fighter, I originally had that piece done because he got a piece of equipment in the game previous to where everyone else got a new piece of equipment. So I thought, oh, okay, let me just do a sketch of what he looks like now. And here you can see the new crest I made for him. He didn't actually have a crest before, but he wanted something with skulls, dragons, based on these crests there. And I just added the circle and star as a bit of flavoring. And now we start the line art, and I didn't manage to record my own character getting the line art done. You can see Muradin here, who is the cleric, getting the berserk armor. Line art done. And yeah, like, now I have to be a bit more precise. So I thought the sketch was hard. No. It's the line art. So a lot of segments on this armor, so I imagine it'd be very flexible. Not that that would actually give an improvement in game. This armor is just sort of flavored to be Berserk themed. Yeah. And none of these references actually had the boots. So luckily for me, I was using these boots of striding and springing as the reference for the boots. So that ended up not mattering. But if it did, I would have had to use even more reference. So here I shorten the mace. It's supposed to be based on the sun, so all right, let me make it a ball and make a bunch of spikes in it at 90-degree angles and in between those 90 degrees. So now I'm working on the Rougue. This is Tofi. And I noticed that this crossbow, it's supposed to be a hand crossbow, so let me just shorten that stock a little. And it's a drawn crossbow. Normally a crossbow wouldn't be drawn like that unless you're ready to use it, because that would stress out the bowstring. So here's a singing sword, and if it's singing, it produces song, then, it should have like a mouth motif. Well, it doesn't have to have one, but I thought that would make sense in a fantasy setting. So here I'm adjusting the hand because I thought it was far too wide. And I adjust it again, and I adjust it again, and I adjust the legs because I thought they were too wide. And here I finally get to lining the fighter. This is Juhman Grimstrong, and I'm working on the sword. And originally it was based on Artorias' sword from Dark Souls 1, but then it switched to the sword from Dragon's Dogma. I didn't want to completely copy the references one for one. I wanted it to mostly reference them, but not be a complete copy. And so this piece of armor right here, this dragon armor, is Dragon Guard, and it's just supposed to have the symbol of a dragon. But I decided, you know what, I'll put a dragon face right on the center. And so here in the armor, you'll notice that he has the same blue greaves and gauntlets as his previous design. These are just flavoring. He doesn't actually get any benefit from them. I just thought it would be nice to draw them and keep them there. So at this point, I'm just making a few details, like making sure I don't forget anything. Yeah, you can see that I did forget stuff there. And now I start adding the flats. And I'm messing with the blue color to sort of separate the background from the foreground, but it doesn't work. So I just delete that and go back to what I was doing. And this layer will actually act as a base for the rest of the colors to go on top of. So I can actually draw outside of the bounds, but it won't count so long as I have that initial layer acting as a limit. So this is a large file, so at like 6,000 by 3,000, and I have 4 characters, so I knew that was going to be quite a few layers of color, and the more layers and the larger the canvas, just the more RAM this is going to take. And you can see by this point it's taking up about 700 megabytes of RAM. So it's trying to just keep it one color a layer, but I do like save a bit with the eyes, and both the sclera and the pupils are their own layer, but there's no unique layer for each character. It's just one for all 4. And so I should talk about these 4 objects. These gauntlets, the dwarf has, the book my elf has, the sword the human has, and the cloak the halfling have, are all imbued with a special magical ore that makes them, makes them magical armor. Well, makes them magical items and gives them benefits. So here I use a chainmail texture on low opacity to help give the texture, and then I proceed to do my normal shading work. And for this part, using what I learned from the previous piece, you can actually see the last video I made where it was a woman in armor. I use that lesson here to make this breastplate. And with this dragon piece, I wanted it to be slightly reflective on the steel. So that's why there seems to be like a highlight. And from my experience drawing gold, it tends to be a sort of orangey yellow, while brass tends to be this greenish yellow. So you'll actually notice that the dwarf's hammer is a greenish yellow. Now we're back to my character. And I'm just referencing that trench coat image, but I'm not copying it exactly because the light source is different. But it's helping me realize that, okay, there's supposed to be folds and bends into this. So let me use that. So this staff is made of glass, and it's supposed to be transparent. So, of course, I'm adding a few details, make it look like glass. That yellow is supposed to be the reflection off the hair. I added a bit of darkening underneath the hand, a few highlights, and here I'm trying to add this sort of energy effect to the book. And the edges of the leaves are gilded, so I'm just adding a little bit of the gold shading. And here we're to the brass mace, and you can see it's that yellowish kind of green, but unfortunately my recording it gave me quite a bit of trouble this time because the 8 hours of footage that I managed to record does not include the line art for my character or the time that I shaded the dwarf. And it crashed about 4 or 5 times during that. So, luckily I didn't lose any of the actual progress with the piece. It was just a recording of it. So here, I'm finally moving on to the eyes. And of course, I'm shading the top of them because they're covered by the brow ridge. And now I'm working on the actual pupils. I'm adding my signature, and yeah, that's it. So this is the team after a time skip.